How's it going, everyone? Vince here with On to the Next podcast. This is episode 5, and this is actually a much anticipated episode. The gentleman who I have on is actually heading into a really big venture, and I want to put a little bit of a disclaimer out there. I am not a political expert, yes, but I do know if I'm going to go into battle, there are few people who I want by my side, and this gentleman is one of them. I ask that you take a listen, especially my Colorado people, as we discuss his journey. This is On to the Next.
It's been a long time coming. They ain't cuffing my cloth, they tugging it. Putting up numbers, 99 problems, and I still kept it 100. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. They ain't cuffing my cloth, they tugging it.
Will, I am so happy to have you on tonight. I'm telling you, this is probably up to now probably one of the most anticipated episodes for me because of what your venture right now, what you have going on. And we are going to get into what you have going on right now. But everybody, Will McBride, and I'll say right now, future governor of Colorado.
All right, that's the plan.
Yes.
So it's I enjoyed visiting with you on the phone before the call and getting to know a little bit about your podcast and On to the Next. And I'm excited to be here. So
Yeah,
thanks for having
and
me.
I
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's crazy because we've met a few years back. Of course, our sons played football together. And I believe in my heart that God puts people in my lives for a reason, and to kind of inspire and help me through my life, through pivots, through to my onto the next moments, and
Right.
how they inspired, and watching people like yourself inspire. And your story is one of those stories that I really appreciated. And my son, it's funny because it was a few days ago. He pulls up on his phone. He's like, "Dad, look who's running for governor."
Right.
I'm like, "Wow, that is amazing!" And so, some of the things that you have accomplished, and I always think that when somebody has kind of reached a pinnacle of some would perceive as he has accomplished it all, and to take that position and say it's time to start giving back to a better cause, a bigger cause than
Right.
what I've accomplished.
Right.
And that's kind of where you're heading right now, right?
Right. Oh, it's exciting to be able to give back and to serve. And it's been always my desire to continue to serve and to serve others. And if things work out as planned, and I would love to serve in that capacity to be able to give back to our community. So
Absolutely. So I know I always delve into what kind of brought you to this position. And I kind of want to even take it back, and I always like to
yeah.
see what fueled where you're at right now, including like where you actually started out from, because um I I think it's really important, especially in today's climate, and letting people know that there there is people out there who actually came from somewhere that they could actually relate to, and where you've come, and to know that they could also be that same person. And I just kind of give me where Will started out as just young Will.
Yeah, I actually started out as Willie, and I tried to get
Willie.
away and so I was always called Willie, so when I went off to college, I tried to change that to Will and then William and so forth, but yeah, I was born in Tampa, and, my dad, he was a Mexican migrant worker, came to the United States from Tijuana, Mexico, worked in the fields in Southern California, then moved over to the, Tampa Bay area, and that's where I was born. So I grew up in the Tampa Bay area in a bilingual home, and I've always had a desire to reach out and help others. My dad was a Spanish minister. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a teacher as well, bivocational pastor. So we were always in service,
Wow.
whether it was in church or giving out food or shoes or visiting people, and so it was always that was part of the service that I had. One of the motivating things for me to become a lawyer was, my parents, they wanted to help people, and like most, well, I don't say like most, but there are some people that are just naive when it comes to business at that point.
Yeah.
And because of the background he came from, and maybe too trusting. And the American dream is to buy a home. So I remember when my parents bought a home and we were all excited. And it was a rent to own because we didn't, I guess my parents didn't have the money to put down. I was 10 years old at the time, so I didn't know all the details.
Yeah, you're
But
just
yeah,
yeah.
just 10 years old, we're in a new home. It was exciting. And then I remember maybe after several months, might have been 8, 9 months, something like that. I remember seeing my mom crying. My dad was concerned, and they were packing everything up. And I'm like, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, we don't have this home anymore." And I learned
Ooh,
later that it was a rent to own type of scheme where my parents were defrauded. They lost everything, and
wow.
we were homeless. And I never forget that. And I was in the car. We were sleeping in a car, and I was with my dad, my sister, my brother, my mom, and dad. And so I told my dad, "Why don't you hire one of those lawyers? They'll go fight for you." And he goes, "We don't know a lawyer, and we don't have any money for a lawyer." So lying going to sleep that evening in the car, I told my dad, I said, "One day I'm going to be a lawyer, and so I can fight people like this. And I'm going to put a tie and go downtown and go to one of those high rise buildings. I'm going to be a lawyer." And so that was
Wow.
kinda like my motivation and, to get into law. And just growing up as a kid, I always liked to stand up to bullies. And from elementary all the way through, people would come to me, and I did get in some fist fights in high school, in elementary and middle school, and it was always trying to stick up for those who couldn't stick up for themselves. And that was just something built in me, and so
I that your story, it's so relatable because actually one of my best friends, Carlos, he comes from same kind of background. His mother came over, a migrant, came over here with their all of her family, his brothers, and um, they were living below means. I mean, I met my best friend in second grade, and we actually were part of teaching them how to speak English to them.
yeah.
So and today you wouldn't think that because he is successful, very well spoken. He just an amazing guy that I love like a brother. And
Yeah.
so hearing your story is like it's so relatable, and it's beyond my friend Carlos. There's so many other stories like
Mhm.
that and sometimes people get stuck in a position where they don't know how to move forward, and I think that's it. The importance of what you're bringing is in your fight of what you've seen in the past to what it is now. It's so vital to so you're on to the next part of your life, and I always like to see because in you're going throughout high school, you're kinda carrying that same mentality of, you're a fighter,
Yeah,
sometimes with your fist,
yeah. Hopefully not
and
not
some
anymore, not anymore,
yeah,
but
not anymore,
I can use
but
my words.
sometimes yeah,
Yeah,
but sometimes, you know what is right and what is wrong because you've seen it happen as a young man, and so did you go to enter into college straight after high school?
well,
And
the irony here is I was, my high school guidance counselor, told me, "You're not college material.
oh boy.
I don't think you should think about going to college." I'm like, "No, I'm gonna go to
Wow.
college." And I had the hardest time with standardized tests. I had the hardest time reading. I had the hardest time, and now I look back, and now I know that I had learning disabilities and dyslexic, and I had no idea at the time, but I really wanted to do it, and it was a struggle for me, and so I was playing sports, and that was one
Yeah.
of the things. I played football in high school, and my dream was to go to the NFL and play in the NFL, and that's how I was gonna make money and how I was gonna break out of the cycle. But, so I had a chance to play some football, and then but I did have some injuries. And in college, I had some neck injuries. I had a narrowing of a spine, so I would lose feeling in my fingers and my hands. And it was one of those things that, after a while, I just said I'm just not going to play anymore. And I did suffer some concussions. I was a quarterback, and
Yeah.
that was one of the hard things. Like, oh, that didn't work out. And then I remember I went to Florida State, and I graduated with a Spanish education degree to be a teacher. And then I remember when I graduated from Florida State, I walked by the law school and I thought, "Oh, wow, I would love to go to that law school." And I remember thinking, "But I can't afford that." And then too, my grades, well, they were okay, but they weren't the greatest. And and so I was like, how am I going to do this? But I do remember walking by that law school, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you a fast forward. May May 2nd or May 4th of this year, I graduated. I'm going to graduate from Florida State Law School with a LLM, which is a higher degree from a law degree.
Yeah.
And so that's at Florida State with business, focus in business law. So, but that's I'm fulfilling one of my dreams from when I was, in college. So
Wow.
now to go back and graduate from Florida State, but I'll tell you, I went to Pepperdine Law School, and that's where I went
Mhm.
to Pepperdine. But in high school, I wasn't college material, and I had a good time in college playing football till I got hurt, and then I started volunteering with churches and speaking in churches, and I wanted to go to law school, but I didn't have any money at the time. So actually, that fighter in me said I just started saving. So for 3 years, I saved all the money I could. I was a youth minister. I was a high school football coach. I was a high school teacher in Georgia, and I was saving as much money as I could. So for 3 years, I saved as much as I could to go to law school. I actually lived in a garage, and I had a hose that I was using for my I guess take showers, and I was paying them
Wow.
$100 a month because I was saving as much money as I could to go to law school. So that drive was in me at that time. So
You look back where you started and you could have easily said out of high school, like, I just need to start making money now because I'm tired of living, as just below means, not having money at all. And a lot of people do that, but it's really encouraging for those young people who feel like they can't do something. Like they don't have the opportunity, or somebody's always telling them, like your counselor, always telling them,
you
yeah,
can't do
you
it.
this isn't for you.
Yeah.
We know we've seen it and you've tested and it's not gonna work.
Right.
But you made this work, and I really commend you for that because not a lot of people take that next step, and for you to go beyond and even to now where you're like, I'm gonna still finish this, I don't have to, but I still want to finish this.
Yeah.
And it's something that I just look to people who have made these next steps and appreciate that so much. And I know I I even look to like my mother. She didn't go to college till she was later on in her years, in her 30s, and
Hmm.
didn't graduate college till in her 40s, and started a career as a victim advocate for the city of Thornton, and successful career in the department. And it it always, things like that just have inspired me my whole life.
Yeah.
And so I want to get into a couple things because I'm I'm a huge boxing fan,
Okay.
and when I when I read, I kind of was snooping through your bio, and I was like, oh, and I kind of passed by it, and did a double take, and I'm like, USA Boxing ringside super heavyweight world title belt. I'm
Yeah.
like, am I reading this right? And super heavyweight platinum gloves in Orlando here.
Yeah.
It so I'm reading that right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And I wanted to find video of you fighting because that
Well,
would
you
have been
can
a
go
kinda.
to William. I think it still might be out there. William McBride, boxer, and there's like a 2 minute, like a commercial that our law firm did,
Yeah.
and so you can see like a highlight of the fights in Kansas City. and it was one of those things. So I grew up playing football, and
Yeah,
I did, I fought just kind of in the street before that.
yeah.
And my dad, coming from a Mexican background, my dad and my uncles were professional boxers.
Oh,
My
yeah,
dad won the Florida Golden Gloves, and my uncle same, and so this is one of those things that it was just in our nature. And
yeah.
then when I was in law school, I thought I started boxing just as a stress reliever. And then I said, I just want to do this one more time because I was working out of New Mexico. I have an office in New Mexico. I live here in Colorado, and New Mexico has a real big boxing community,
It does.
the MMA.
Absolutely.
So I started sponsoring a lot of the boxing, and then I took the slogan, I fight to win. And then I sponsored a team to go to ringside. And then I thought, this will be a great commercial. I'm going to fight. And nobody knew it. So I trained and trained and trained and trained with a trainer. And then I went and then I showed up and they saw me on the roster. Said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to fight." And so they're like, "Okay." The whole team, because there's a team from Orlando that went and a team from Albuquerque, New Mexico that went. And they're like, "No, this is for real. This is you don't get in there." And I don't know if you've ever been in one of those USA boxing. You just keep fighting the whole week until you lose, and
Yeah.
then you just keep advancing. And so then I advanced all the way to the end, and there was a fighter out of Oklahoma City, and they're like, "Oh, you better be careful." And it was a TKO in the second round. So and then
Wow.
I got that super heavyweight belt, and it was lots of fun. So
That's awesome.
and he was
It's
a southpaw. If you know boxing, he was a southpaw.
well,
So
I'm a southpaw,
when it came
so
to it, I mean, you guys were used to fighting us, and I'm a righty, and
yeah,
so at that point, it's like everything is backwards. And
yeah,
so instead of doubling the jab, I just doubled the right and tried to stay away from his left. So
yeah,
and that worked really well, and it made a great commercial. So
yeah, I
it was the
bet.
hardest commercial I shot for my law firm ever. So, but
Well,
I mean, yeah,
I'm definitely gonna research that because I love to see that.
yeah,
But yeah, it's an important part of your I really believe it's an important part of your story because of what you've carried on to today in your fighting mentality of, just even as you're saying through your whole life out of high school, "I'm gonna go to college." Yeah, whatever you say, well,
yeah,
and going to college, "I'm gonna go to law school."
yeah,
Okay, we'll see
yeah,
when it happens.
yeah.
We're gonna
Yes,
so and
I just love those opportunities, and it's something, and as you're a fighter, you know this, and in life, there are so many things that are just you just gotta grit it out, whether it's playing football, training, boxing, sports are great for that, and it's just the
absolutely.
heart of the fighter, and just don't give up. I'm gonna die or I'm gonna win. That's my mentality, and if I can't get it this time, I'm gonna figure out another way how to get it next time. So,
Yeah, and, I was talking to one of the other guys on the podcast about how the importance of sports growing up, the nature of, one, teamwork, resilience,
yeah,
and fighting through, the challenges that life can bring you because just those minutes on the field could turn into years later down the road.
right,
So, yeah, it's amazing, and, um, you know, you get past the point of, your college career and go you said Pepperdine, right, is where you graduated law
right,
school,
yeah.
and that I mean, I was just going through your list of accomplished, education accomplishments, and now you're in 11 states, right?
Yeah,
As
I'm licensed
your
in 11.
yes,
So,
and that's amazing, and I like I said, one of the states being here in Florida, which where we met initially,
right. Yeah,
and so you you call Colorado home now,
right, right.
and so how long have you been there now? As
Well,
I mean
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
came out here, when I was in the late '90s to run a youth camp in
Okay.
Wyoming, and I'd be down in the Colorado area, and I just love Colorado. As a kid, growing up in Florida, I would
Mhm.
get a magazine called Field& and Stream. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and all the hunting and the outdoors, and I'm like, "One day I'm gonna go to Colorado." That was my dream, Colorado, Colorado. I wanna be in Colorado. I ended up in Wyoming for a little while in the late 90s, but I was always down in Colorado. And so I came back here, and it was actually I got into the University of Denver Law School and Pepperdine. And so I was thinking, well, I really love Colorado. So, but then I went to Pepperdine, and if you know Pepperdine, it's a fabulous school as well.
Mhm.
And uh, and so I was able to go to Pepperdine, and then we came out here quite a bit to go skiing all the time. We were always out here in Colorado, trying to figure out how I could move out here. And then in 2015, so it's been about almost 10 years. Yeah, it's been 10 years. I passed the bar here, took the bar. Um, well, I came out here and I was admitted into the bar here in Colorado. And because I actually waived into Colorado, I didn't have to take the bar here.
Okay.
That's kind of like a complicated one. You take bar exams in other states like Florida, I had to take and I
Yeah.
had to pass it, but Florida's a closed state. And then there's other states like Texas, I could waive in, but New Mexico, I had to take. So, and then Washington, I was able to take, and then I could waive in. So I waived into Colorado. So I was able to waive into Colorado in 2015, and then I kept coming back and forth. Had a second residence here, and then right before the pandemic, because my kids wanted to play at Valor, so let's get them to go to Valor, and they could play football there. And
Yeah.
then I'd go back and forth between Florida because I still have my office in Orlando, but the pandemic happened, and that's when I was in another fight to keep my firm alive. So I sold my house in Florida and tried to get rid of as much debt as possible and get as much liquidity as possible during that time. But so that
Yeah.
we came out here, we just basically stayed here in 2015, and so we've enjoyed it ever since.
Yeah,
So
and it's such a beautiful state. It's I grew up there. I grew up in at at the time we called it the North Side, now it's the Highlands,
yeah,
same same little if I don't know if you've been down there, there's this little pizza shop called Pizza Alley, still sits there. It's like
okay.
one of the last remaining places down in the Highlands area, north of Denver.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's where my grandmother and grandfather, that's where their house was, and kind of grew up all over the Denver area, some of the suburbs north. But it was my home, and I still call it my home state. It's
Mhm.
a beautiful. I have pretty much all my family out there. My
Yeah.
mother just recently moved out here, and uh, I so my my ties and my like concern for the state is always there. And when I go back to visit, and sometimes it's like I go back and I'm like, man, it's just not. Sometimes it doesn't feel the same, like the same state in the city. I think a lot of the outside up in the mountains. I mean, you still have such a beautiful. It's even more. What's great is they've made such a great tourism now off the 14ers, that the
Mhm.
amounts of trails that they made up there. That
Right.
and but you know looking into your venture that you're heading into now, I think it's such an important piece to what you're doing, and it's like probably one of the more onto the next moments that I consider of somebody doing, and that's running for office for governor.
Mhm.
And I really genuinely, just by talking to you, that you're doing it truly as a service to the people. And I kind of want to talk you to kind of talk about where your mindset was initially running for governor.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is there has been a polarization. The extremes have taken place in our country. Our country is more divided than ever.
Mm,
And, the scripture clearly says a house divided can't stand.
yeah.
And right now we are so divided to the left and to the right. And I don't have a party. I can't follow a party line. I can't align with a party. And as I started seeing here in Colorado, 50% are unaffiliated registered
Yes.
voters. And I saw this poll 62% from, I think it was Gallup, that said 62% want an independent candidate. They want a third party. They want a different choice. You've heard it. This is people sitting around the kitchen and the kitchen table talk. I wish we had a third person. we're going to vote for the lesser of two evils. I'm not happy with either, but I have to vote for one. I don't want to vote
Yes.
for worse. I want to vote for bad. And so I wanted to give people the opportunity to say, there is another choice, and we can be civil. We can disagree, and I'm not going to compromise on some of my core beliefs. Uh, but we can disagree, but we can still be respectful. We don't have to go to these extreme of the woke that we've seen, but we don't have to engage with this childish talk, name calling, that's just divided our country. Why don't we come back to the middle? Come back to the middle. And then as I was studying, because I do have an MBA from the University of Florida, and economics is very important in this situation we are right now. The middle class. I hear people talking about the wealthy, and then people are challenging people on the wealthy, and they're going to take from the wealthy to give to the poor. And it's this, but nobody's looking at the middle class. And
Yeah.
a strong middle class is the backbone of any economy, because somebody has to buy the billionaires tickets to their ball games, to their concerts, to their
Absolutely.
cars. And if you cut down, so to speak, all of the trees in the forest, the billionaires don't have anyone to sell to. And and unfortunately, with Colorado being so beautiful, so much to offer, as you do the research shows, people are leaving the state fast. People are the birth rate is extremely low. Infertility is very high. So this population will not sustain what we have here in Colorado. And then we have housing prices that have skyrocketed 109%. And I'm reading
Yes.
articles about, in order to be just middle class, you have to make 54% more or 50% more here in Colorado. And so this is like spinning out of control. Now, I was in California and I considered living there after law school, but with a high state income tax of 13 something percent, and then just all the regulations, just choking small businesses. Uh, that's not what we want here in Colorado. I moved here. I love Colorado and I want to protect Colorado. And there is just a lot of good people. I think there's a verse that's really motivating my law firm as well now, even in this campaign, is Proverbs 31, 8 and 9. And we're called to speak up for those that don't have a voice, defend the rights of the poor and the needy, and to do justice. And so right now, there's a lot of people that are saying, we got a problem. I think we all recognize the problem, but nobody wants to step up. Kind of like Goliath is out there. David's got to step on the battlefield. And I just,
Yes.
I was struggling with this, to be honest with you, because I've got a lot going on. Is this something that I could really do? I can't run with any party, but there was just a calling that I had to run and to get out there. And one of the things that, being Latino, I've seen a lot of the hate take place towards people in the Latino community, Spanish speaking. Daily, people call my office and say, "Go back to where you came from. We speak English," because I advertise in the Latino community and on Spanish television. And when I read about an 11-year-old girl that committed suicide because she was being bullied at school, this
Mhm.
happened in Texas, and because it said ICE was going to come get her parents. I have a little girl, and I can see how emotional they could be. I'm like, can somebody stand up and say this is not appropriate? Now, the talk of immigration is necessary, but the tone is just completely out of line. It's not American. And then also just seeing the housing, everything becoming so unaffordable right now. We can turn this around before it becomes the next California, and it doesn't have to be left or right. We can have an adult in the middle, fight for the middle class, and it's all law of supply and demand, and make sure that we're promoting small businesses and jobs. But I will tell you, I've been doing a lot of research. I'll tell you something else that you don't know, but it's not on my resume. But I've been working through finishing a master's of real estate at Georgetown, and
Okay.
this summer I'll finish it. I just have to do a capstone. And one of the big issues I see in the housing market is there's no way to identify our housing crisis. We don't have any type of indicator. After World War One, there was no way to measure unemployment, and then that resulted in the Great Depression. So
Mhm.
now they came up at that right around the time our government came a way to measure unemployment, and that is a gauge on our economy. We need to have some type of gauge of the housing, of loss of housing, or people that can't afford housing, so that we can measure that to make sure that we can have policies that will not interfere with the free enterprise that we have, but that we can encourage a balance in the supply and demand.
I yeah,
That's
and
so
I totally agree, and I think it's just it's really important for people to understand that, um, even in the position that you're coming from as a Latino, coming in because, one thing that is important is especially now is as far as us being as divided as a country. And I was just talking with my friends about this, about how cultures have kind of even separated themselves from each other, because nobody wants to find a common ground anymore because of, I guess, the extremists on each side. Because I'm unaffiliated myself, and it's for that reason,
Mhm,
because we need to find a common ground in the middle, and whether it be through, like I said, with me, it's through my faith and knowing
right,
that there is a balance, and I know
right,
the balance, but also the balance of just, "Hey, we need to figure this out as a people together," and, um, I I really I really prayed about this. I pray every night. I pray throughout the day about, what where God has me, and kind of what, He's seen even in this podcast. And I kind of, 3 words came to my mind with you, and one of them is unity, is because of where you stand, and being that man in the middle to say, "Hey, we're going to join each other." The other
mhm,
one is progress, um, because of what you've initiated and where you wanna take Colorado, and whether it be economically, or just the balance between just conversation
mhm,
with things like immigration.
mhm,
And the other one is truth, because, you've come to from a place where there was only truth. Your parents at that moment in your life, they had to give you truth because there was no other option. Hey, we're in a position where we're gonna actually lose our home,
mhm,
and that was a big truth to you, and for you to say, well, I want to fight for
mhm.
something better. Even as young Willie,
Yeah,
you're fighting, as you're thinking it. I That's inspiring you,
mhm,
and that's kind of been your truth the whole, um, I guess, the whole period of your life, and pushing forward
yeah,
through any challenges that have come your way, and I
and I think
appreciate.
and I think the thing is, thank you for sharing that, because that is one of the reasons why I'm doing this, because a politician who wants to help himself will tell people what they want to hear. They'd run a poll and say, "What do people want to hear?" And they jump out in front and say, "Yeah, this is what I believe too."
Yes.
Yeah, that's not what I want to do. And it's a little dangerous, but at the same time, I want to tell people what they need to hear.
Yeah.
There's a great business book, one of the greats, Good to Great. Jim Collins talks about helping people confront the brutal facts, and you can't change something until you confront the brutal facts. Now, we can confront the brutal facts and not just, ignore them, but we can do it and say, okay, now here's what the facts are. The facts are housing's out the roof, so to speak. Unemployment is higher in the last 3 years. Coloradans are struggling to find jobs. Small businesses are getting hammered. It's making more difficult. I don't know if you heard today, the mayor of Denver is trying to add 20% service tax on top of meals, and so it's already more expensive. And these businesses are struggling. So I just think there's got to be some way that we discuss the facts in a civil way, confront the brutal facts, and kind of going what you're saying. I believe we have to do three things. We have to first heal as a country.
Mhm.
There has to be unity. Once we have healing and unity, then we can have growth. But we can't have growth economically, socially, until we can first heal, and then we can unify, and then we can grow. And that starts out with, first of all, just talking politely to people. We can still be true to our beliefs, but we can be respectful, because we're created in the image of God, and we should be treat others respectfully. And that's where I want to bring people to the table. I've talked to people who are Muslims. I talked to Jewish people, Christians, people that have no belief. but we can all come together and respect each other's decisions, and and then we should be open to have conversations, but not demonize people, and that's got to stop. So,
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's brave of you to come out and to address even the issues that have been brought, because it's has caused a lot of division.
mhm,
And have so many people in Colorado that all my family and friends are still out there, and I do see the division amongst, whether it be online or just through conversation. And I think it's time we find the balance.
right,
And I honestly, if it's gonna start with you, then I say so be it, because I mean, I think it's really needed, you
right.
know?
And I think people have asked me, "How can I pray for you in this campaign?" And it's a psalm that says, "May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer." Because there's so many times that we just want to just say things. And have I done that? Absolutely. And I'll give you a really good example. One time in trial here in Denver, I I tried this case, and on cross examination, I completely destroyed the defense expert. I mean, I destroyed the defense expert, and I was cocky in it. And I thought, "Oh, I got him good." And I did. And then at the end of the trial, the jury didn't come back with as high as a verdict as I'd have liked. And they told me, they said, "You mansplained." And we
Mm,
didn't like that. And in trial, they call it the BJR rule. It's called the bigger jerk rule. And you don't violate the bigger jerk rule. And then it kind of convicted me. I said, I'm a believer, and people know that I'm a believer. And for me to go in it was professional. There wasn't anything that was, unethical, but to act in that way, that just was not a great representation of my faith and what I do. So there's a certain way I've learned now, and I'm trying by God's grace to be able to communicate truth in a way that will still be honoring, because we can talk about difficult subjects and we can be firm, but we don't have to be nasty about it. And so that's my goal in this campaign and in my life. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer, and to
yeah,
treat everyone as children that are created, that are individuals created in the image of God, and understand that God loves them, and I must love them as well. I might disagree, but I must love them.
yeah.
So,
It's a testament in who you are, because I I just started this venture myself, and I'm like, how, who are the people I'm gonna talk to on this podcast?" And, I pray for God to bring me these people, and He has throughout my life. Just I didn't know that He was gonna bring, and He will continue to, because there are so many people who I believe that will benefit from the stories and what you have to offer, even in your campaign right now. So, I really pray for you and
mhm.
for your family, because I know it's gonna be a trial.
Yeah,
It's like you're on trial right now.
yeah,
It's like you think, you're in the court, but it's like, well, you're on trial for the next year to, you know, kind of plead your case, which is,
right.
I think your case is very upfront. And I think even a lot of people who are divided that I've seen throughout will actually see. And when truth, like I said, when unity, progress, and truth come to head, and you're there in front
Mhm,
with your words, I believe it's really appreciated. And I thank you so much for just
mhm.
doing this, Will. And I truly don't think it's just a voice for the Latino, but I think it's a voice for every
Oh,
person out
absolutely.
there in the state, because I think everybody kind of needs this healing that
Right.
you're talking about, because
Mm,
it is, and it hurts me. I see some of my friends, like kids, even getting so angry, because of what they're fed, w- whether it's through the education system
mhm.
or through the media, and it's like it's consuming hate
Right,
daily.
right.
It's not. it's daily that they're being fed this, and
Again, as the Bible says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he.
yes.
And what we continue to think about and dwell on, that's what we become. And it's really hard to go to church on Sundays and for because I come from a Christian background, Christian faith, and preach one gospel on Sunday, and then Monday through Saturday support a lot of things that are contrary, that might be right in principle, but completely wrong in the approach and tone. Because I mean, you got to be able to communicate truth in a way that's that's uh that you truth can be offensive, but we don't have to be offensive in presenting the truth. I mean,
Yes.
Christ is the ultimate. I mean, he presented truth and he came to his own and his own received him not. And they ended up beating and crucifying him, and apostles the same. So, that's when we present truth, it will be offensive. Truth is in of itself offensive, but we don't have to be offensive in the way we present and enforce truth.
And I guess so. This is another thing, is because, and I actually got to have lunch with my mother today. She's a beautiful Christian woman,
Yeah.
and her and my stepdad and my brothers in town. But um, we were talking about the fear of faith right now.
Mm.
Even us speaking of faith, speaking of God, there's almost a fear of what faith brings to the table as a political figure.
Right.
And I kind of want you to give what it means, rather than like we're not directly telling people this is
No.
who, it's I kind of want you to give your take on that. Like,
Yeah.
what do how do you feel about like people
Right.
actually having fear of faith instead of saying, I do have the fear of God because of me, my daily life through my convictions,
Right.
um but actually having fear of faith, how do you feel about that?
Well, I stand with what Paul said in Romans 1, I believe 16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of God, for it is the power of Christ unto salvation to all who believe. And so that is, I'm not ashamed of it. And
Yeah,
nobody should be ashamed to be able to speak here in America. We have the freedom of religion, we have the freedom of speech. And I should be in this country based on our Constitution and First Amendment. I should have the freedom to share my faith in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And others may not agree with it. They may disagree with it. And that's fine because they're free to believe or not believe. Because we don't change society by legislating from the Capitol in Denver or from DC and in the United States. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And if our country is in a position where there isn't much faith, and I would say faith in God. There's a lot of faith. People have faith in themselves. They have faith in other things. But we're saying true biblical faith in the gospel of Jesus
yes,
Christ. It's because our churches aren't doing what they should be doing because they're more interested in programs, they're more interested in building a mega church. They're more if we want to see change in our country, we should have the freedom to preach it from our pulpits. And that's one of the things I struggle because we're not trying to make America Christian again. We're not trying to legislate prayer because how many people even pray at home with their kids? How many people read their Bibles at home with their kids? And I think that that's something that needs to come from our churches, our places of worship. And we should encourage people to have the freedom to worship or not worship. And so we shouldn't be we shouldn't be ashamed of it. We shouldn't be afraid. But it's just one of those things that I want to be. I want to be fair, and I want to have consistency, and I want to be civil. And as we apply our laws, as we reach out to others, and it's not like I'm trying to. This Christian nationalism is not biblical because we're not trying to bring back the kingdom of God by creating a Christian nation. And I'm probably ruffling some people who are Christians or are very conservative and think that Trump is the answer to God bringing back Christianity in America. But that's not the purpose. We need to focus on our preachers. We need to focus on our ministries. We need to get out of our pews, out of our seats. And so inward focus and go into the communities because we have a drug problem. And the drug problem is not because fentanyl is coming into the United States. If there was no demand for it, it wouldn't be coming in. We've
yeah,
got to go out there and meet people where they are and reach them. and share the good news of the gospel with them, and not just try to legislate all these different things. Sure, should we have certain areas to protect criminals from coming in? Absolutely. Should we try to prevent drugs from coming? Yeah, but we could do a better job of it if we're reaching the hearts of the people and not just trying to change the conduct. So
Yeah, I know that your message will be conveyed because of the truth that you bring across. So, Will,
yeah,
next governor of Colorado,
Lord willing.
Lord
So
willing.
and
Um,
I just want to get the opportunity to share a different choice and give everyone the opportunity to speak and share and bring their views to the table and feel like they're heard. And then we make decisions and we go forward with that. That's the voice I want to give to the people.
yes. Well, your story is definitely a story that it brings truth to the table, and I appreciate it because I believe, um, when all is said and done, it's gonna help somebody move on to their next, with what you're doing. And I appreciate you so much, Will, just coming on and being a part of the On to the Next podcast.
And I think the biggest thing is on to the next. There's a verse out of Philippians 1:6, being confident of this very thing, that he which began a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. And as we're speaking to those believers who are also called overcomers, um, we can say, well, greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. And if
Yes,
God is for us, who can be against us? Because he began that good work at the point of justification, of salvation. He is working through that sanctification, through all these trials that we have, so that we can mature and grow to be ultimately in that time of glorification. And we should not be ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God to everyone,
absolutely.
to salvation to everyone that believes. So I would encourage those who are believers, be encouraged, go forward. We don't have to be silent. For those who are not Christians and who are saying, well, why should I vote for a governor who says he's a Christian? Because I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to believe what they want to believe, to worship where they want to worship, and to respect everyone. And I'm going to give the opportunity, because I can't legislate God's love in somebody's heart, but I
Mm,
can, show it, and I can demonstrate it from the top coming down. And and that's what I want to do. I want to just love people like Christ would love them, and make sure that we are communicating truth to protect our economy, to protect uh, our families, to our small businesses, and so that we can heal, and then we can unify, and then we can grow, and then we can go Colorado on to the next. The next generation.
absolutely.
I turn to carry that baton, and I'm going to carry it as faithfully as I can to give it to the next generation.
Well, I appreciate it, and I think down the road there's going to be a lot of people who appreciate where your heart is and what you're actually bringing uh, to Colorado. And I can't appreciate you enough for doing this, the podcast, and given. I just wanted your voice to be heard. That's the biggest thing, because it's a voice that needs to be heard, and I there's going to be so many people who are going to be excited about this.
Well, good. I hope there are a lot of people that are excited, and we can tell people what they need to hear, and I can win this case so that we could turn it around and go in a different direction here in Colorado.
Absolutely. Thanks, Will.
All right. Thanks for having me. Lord bless you.
Yes.
Thanks.
God bless.